I never planned to give my sister $25,000. Let me start with that. It wasn't part of some long-held dream or sisterly fantasy. I didn't grow up thinking one day I'll fund Jessica's wedding. No, I had other dreams, like buying a small house in the suburbs with a backyard, maybe starting a small rescue center for senior dogs. I had been saving for years, cutting back on takeout, saying no to vacations, working weekends on freelance IT projects, all to reach that elusive down payment. So when Jessica called me crying one afternoon about how her dream wedding was falling apart, I should have said no, but I didn't. Jessica was always the golden girl in our family, blonde, bubbly, effortlessly adored by everyone. Our parents doted on her like she was the last diamond left on earth, while I, reliable, responsible Casey, was praised only when I cleaned up her messes. Still, I convinced myself it wasn't favoritism, just different personalities, different needs. When she got engaged to Dylan, some financial analyst she met at a networking brunch, the whole family practically threw a parade. Our mom began planning color schemes before the ring even fit properly. Dad offered to cover the open bar, and our aunt sent a check for the dress. Meanwhile, Jessica called me sobbing about vendor deposits and how Dylan's family wasn't helping at all. She said she knew it was a huge ask, but could I, maybe, help? Not even all of it, just something to get them back on track. Just until Dylan's bonus comes through, she said. She didn't ask for 25 grand, that was my number. I looked at my bank account, hesitated, and wired the money 2 hours later. She didn't even have to twist my arm. She thanked me profusely, told me I was the best sister in the world, and promised she'd make it up to me. Not financially, of course not, but emotionally, spiritually, in sister points. I didn't even question it. I didn't do it for payback. I did it because I genuinely believed I was doing something good. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would finally be the thing that made her see me not just as the backup plan, the fixer, the invisible scaffolding of her life, but as someone who mattered. Our mom was thrilled. She told me, "You're such a blessing, honey. Jessica is lucky to have you." Dad said I'd made a real adult decision, whatever that meant. Jessica sent me heart emojis and a selfie of her blowing kisses in front of a wedding dress store. "Look who just booked the photographer of her dreams," she wrote. I smiled. I didn't reply right away. I was trying to calculate how long it would take to rebuild the money I just gave away. Probably 2 more years, maybe 3 if work slowed down. But I told myself it was worth it. It was family, it was love, it was what good sisters do. A month passed. Jessica got her bridal shower. I helped plan it, made little place cards, and brought gluten-free options because one of her friends was clean eating now. I noticed, vaguely, that I didn't get a thank you in her speech at the shower, but I brushed it off. She was flustered, excited. These things happen. I didn't expect a parade. That night, as I loaded the leftover cupcakes into my car, one of her friends, Amanda, hugged me and said, "You're seriously amazing. Jess told us you gave her like 25 grand. That's insane." I smiled tightly, nodded, and said something generic like, "She's my stomach," twisted. I hadn't realized Jessica had shared that number with her friends. It felt weird, personal. But again, I brushed it off. I was being sensitive, right? The next morning, I woke up to a screenshot from Michelle, one of my college friends, who had been invited to the shower. Did you see this?" she wrote. My heart dropped as I opened the image. It was a group chat, Jessica and several of her bridal party. My name was right there. "Can you believe Casey only gave 25K? Jessica had written. "She makes 6 figures and acts like she's doing me a massive favor. Cheap trash energy," someone replied with laughing emojis. Another chimed in, "Classic single girl syndrome, throws money around to feel relevant." A third said, "Bet she expects to be maid of honor now, lol." I stared at my phone for a long time. Cheap trash, that's what she called me. After I'd given up my dream of a home, after I'd spent weekends making her invitations by hand, after I'd answered her 2 a.m. panic calls about flower arrangements. Cheap trash. That was the moment something in me shifted. Something inside me turned cold, sharp, calculating. I wasn't going to cry, not this time. I wasn't going to send a long, heartfelt message begging her to explain. No, that version of me, the soft one, the apologetic one, the peacekeeper, was done. This wasn't just about the money. It was about respect, about dignity, about family lines that had been crossed and set on fire. Jessica wanted a wedding, she'd get one, but not the one she was expecting. I didn't respond to the screenshot right away. I didn't even reply to Michelle, who had sent it with genuine concern. Instead, I stared at the image for hours, letting the words sink in like poison. Cheap trash energy. Classic single girl syndrome. Bet she expects to be maid of honor now, lol. It wasn't just what they said, it was how casual it was, like talking trash about me behind my back was normal. Like I had never really been considered part of their group, just some convenient ATM in the shape of a sister. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed thinking about every moment over the past few months. Every call Jessica had made to cry on my shoulder. Every time she said I was the only one who understood her vision. Every expense I'd quietly covered at $25,000, 0 cents in cash, yes, but also the rehearsal dinner deposit, the flower girl's dress for our cousin's daughter, even the venue photographer's rush fee when Jessica changed her mind last minute. I never made a fuss. I didn't want to be the petty one, the jealous older sister. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I hadn't realized I was being used until I saw it laid out in cold text bubbles with laughing emojis. In the morning, I looked at my phone again, hoping I'd imagined it all. Maybe they had been joking, maybe it was sarcasm, but reading it a second time only made it worse. The tone was clear, disdain wrapped in entitlement. I could hear her voice in my head, talking to her bridesmaids, rolling her eyes, laughing at how desperate I must have been to try and buy love. What was most painful was realizing this wasn't new. I started recalling little moments that suddenly made more sense. Last Christmas, when I gave her and Dylan a gift card for a fancy cooking class, she'd said, "Oh, only $500? 0 cents? Thought you'd go bigger, sis." I laughed at the time, thinking it was just her joking tone. On my birthday last year, she posted a photo of us with the caption, "Happy birthday to the one who always has her life, somewhat together." I'd been hurt but shrugged it off. That was my mistake. I should have seen this coming. I spent the next few days in quiet observation. I didn't confront her. I didn't let on that I knew. I wanted to see how deep this went. At the next family brunch, she greeted me like nothing was wrong. "Hey sis, you look so cute today. That blazer's giving CEO vibes." I smiled, thanked her, and nodded through the meal while mentally noting how she avoided introducing me to some of her friends seated at the far end of the table. Later that day, I looked at her Instagram stories. She had posted photos of the brunch, tagging every single guest except me. I wasn't in a single shot, not even the wide group photo. It was like I wasn't there. That same afternoon, our mother called me. "Jess is feeling a little overwhelmed," she said, her voice soft, apologetic. "She's worried about the honeymoon budget. Dylan's been pulling extra hours and, well," she didn't want to ask, but I cut her off politely. "I've given what I could. I'm not covering anything else." Mom hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "But sweetheart, she's your sister. She's done so much for you over the years." I almost laughed. Done so much? Like what, stealing the spotlight at every family event, making me feel like I was lucky to be tolerated in her orbit? But I didn't say that. I just repeated, "I'm not giving her another dollar." That was when I realized I wasn't just angry. I was done. I had spent a lifetime tiptoeing around Jessica's ego, giving and giving, while being treated like a backup dancer in the performance of her life. But now, I had leverage. Because what Jessica had failed to consider was that I wasn't just a passive observer. I had power, and I'd been holding it quietly. The financial side of her wedding, a lot of it was in my name. She'd begged me to handle the logistics. "You're so good at organizing," she'd said. So I'd put my name on the contracts for the rehearsal dinner venue, the transportation company for the bridal party, the custom fireworks show, and even the late-night taco truck she swore would be the cherry on top of her big day. I had email receipts, signed service agreements, and confirmation messages, all linked to my account, my name, my credit card. I hadn't even realized just how many strings I held until I sat down and reviewed it all. My first instinct was to cancel everything immediately, but that would be too easy, too loud. I wanted her to feel the unraveling in real time. I wanted her to watch her fantasy wedding slowly implode, piece by piece, and wonder what was happening. I started with the taco truck. I called and politely informed them we'd no longer be needing their services on the scheduled date. Then the fireworks. Then the flower wall rental she'd insisted on. I was strategic, removing things she had hyped up publicly. things she'd posted about. Can't wait for the flower wall, aesthetic dreams, she'd written just days earlier. I contacted the photo booth rental company, which she was planning to surprise the guests with. I canceled that too. And then I sat back and waited. 3 days later, she called me in a panic. Hey, weird question. Did you get an email about the flower wall being canceled? I kept my tone flat. No, I haven't seen anything. Maybe you should check with the company. She sighed. Yeah, I'm gonna call. I swear, this wedding is cursed. First the taco truck, now this. I murmured something sympathetic, hiding my smile. That's really unfortunate. Over the next week, the unraveling continued. Every few days, she'd call or text, flustered about another cancellation. Each time, I played dumb. I even offered to help by looking into it, then came back with vague, unhelpful answers. Eventually, she stopped calling. By then, I'd canceled nearly everything I had control over, except for the rehearsal dinner. That was my ace, a formal sit-down dinner with 40 guests at a rooftop restaurant, fully prepaid under my account. I waited until the day before to pull the plug, then texted the venue asking for confirmation that the cancellation had gone through. I made sure to BCC Jessica's wedding email on that thread. That night, I got a flurry of texts. What is going on? Did you cancel the rehearsal dinner? Casey, call me right now. I didn't answer. I turned my phone on silent, opened a bottle of wine, and queued up a true crime documentary. The next day, our mother called. Casey, your sister is hysterical. The restaurant says the reservation was canceled under your name. Please, can you fix this? I told her calmly that there must have been some confusion. I thought Jess didn't want anything else from me. I mean, she said I was cheap trash. Surely she wouldn't want anything I paid for, right? The silence on the other end of the line was so heavy, it almost echoed. You saw that? Mom finally asked. Yes, and now you've seen what I'm capable of. And that was just the beginning. The morning after the rehearsal dinner disaster, my phone started buzzing before sunrise. Calls, texts, voicemails, Jessica, my mother, even Dylan. I didn't answer any of them. I sat on the porch with my coffee, watching the sky shift from gray to gold, feeling an unfamiliar calm in my chest. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't bracing myself for someone else's emotions. I wasn't rushing to smooth things over or explain myself. I was just existing, quiet, steady, unbothered. That calm lasted until about 9:15 a.m. when the doorbell rang and didn't stop. I opened it to find Jessica on my porch in a full meltdown, no makeup, hair frizzed, wearing Dylan's hoodie and flip-flops. Her eyes were wild. What the hell did you do? She screamed. You canceled everything, didn't you? The flower wall, the taco truck, the photo booth, the rehearsal dinner, even the goddamn fireworks? What is wrong with you? I didn't flinch. I simply stepped aside and said, come in, if you want to have a calm conversation. She shoved past me like a storm cloud, pacing my living room as she kept yelling, you've ruined everything. People are talking, Casey. My friends are asking questions. My coordinator thinks I'm disorganized. Dylan's parents were embarrassed last night. I had to cobble together a dinner at my aunt's house with trays of cold pasta. This was supposed to be perfect. I sat on the edge of my couch and looked at her for a moment. Do you want to know why I did it? She stopped pacing, arms folded. Oh, I think I know. You're bitter. You're jealous. You hate that I'm happy. You hate that I'm getting married, and you're, what, still single, living alone with a bunch of spreadsheets and a wine fridge? I raised an eyebrow. That's your theory? Yes, she spat. That's exactly it. I got up and retrieved my phone from the kitchen counter. I pulled up the screenshot Michelle had sent me and handed it to her. You want to try again? Jessica glanced at it, then looked again, slower this time. Her face paled. Where did you get this? That doesn't matter, I said. What matters is that I saw it. I saw everything, every word you wrote, every laugh you shared with your little entourage. You called me cheap trash, Jess, after I gave you $25,000. After I rearranged my life to help make your wedding happen. And don't try to claim it was a joke, because none of them were laughing with me. You were all laughing at me. She stared at the screen like it might disappear if she blinked hard enough. Then she dropped onto the arm of the couch and covered her face with her hands. I didn't mean it, she mumbled. It was stupid. I was venting. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Planning this wedding has been a nightmare. Everyone expects me to be perfect, and Dylan's mom is impossible, and I was overwhelmed. I lashed out. I'm sorry. I crossed my arms. Sorry that you said it, or sorry that I found out. She didn't answer. Look, she said finally, I'm getting married tomorrow. Can we just move past this? Can you undo some of the cancellations? At least the fireworks. They were my dream ending. Her voice cracked then, and for a brief moment I saw a flash of the little sister I used to protect, the one who scraped her knees and came running to my room because I always had Band-Aids and Skittles hidden in my drawer. But that image vanished as quickly as it came. I remembered the way she'd tossed my efforts aside like garbage, the way she'd allowed others to mock me in that chat, how she never once came to my defense. I took a deep breath. No, I'm not undoing anything. In fact, I might still be canceling more. You burned the bridge, Jess. You don't get to walk back across it because you suddenly realized you needed what was on the other side. Her mouth fell open, but before she could respond, my phone buzzed with a message from Dylan. I'd like to talk, alone, please. I read it twice, then showed it to her. Her eyes widened. He texted you? Apparently. She jumped to her feet. What did you tell him? Nothing yet, but I will meet him. He deserves to know who he's marrying. She exploded again. You are not going to sabotage my wedding. You are bitter, but that doesn't mean you get to destroy my life. I tilted my head. You already destroyed what mattered between us. I'm just letting the consequences arrive on schedule. That was the last thing I said before I opened the door and watched her storm out. Later that afternoon, I met Dylan at a local park. We sat on opposite sides of a picnic table, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. Finally, he spoke. I know you canceled a bunch of stuff for the wedding. Jess is, well, she's not in a good place right now. She's angry. But honestly, I'm not here to ask you to fix it. I looked at him carefully. Then why are you here? He sighed. Because I've had doubts. For months, she's been
different.
Obsessed with how things look, what people think, keeping score. When you canceled everything and she lost it, I expected anger, but not the level of venom I saw. She said some things to me last night that made me realize this isn't just stress, it's who she's become. I watched him closely. Are you calling off the wedding? I don't know, he admitted. I love her, but I'm not sure I trust her anymore. And if she can treat you the way she has, her own sister, then what happens when I disappoint her? I nodded. People like Jessica count on others to clean up their messes. When they can't, they break things. Dylan ran a hand through his hair. I just wanted to hear it from you. I wanted to know if it was true. I handed him my phone and let him read the screenshot. He read it in silence, eyes scanning slowly, then handed it back without a word. The next morning was Jessica's wedding day. I didn't go. I wasn't invited. By noon, my mother called me in a frenzy. You are not going to believe what happened. Jessica showed up at the venue, and Dylan never arrived. His family was there. The guests were there. She waited for an hour before someone finally admitted he left town this morning. He canceled the honeymoon reservation and left a note with the coordinator saying, "Tell her I'm not the man she needs or deserves." She burst into tears. "Casey, what did you say to him?" I kept my voice calm, the truth. There was a long silence. Then she asked, "Why would you do this to her?" I almost laughed. "You think I did this to her? She did it to herself. I just stopped protecting her from the consequences." When I hung up, I expected to feel heavy, conflicted, maybe even guilty. But I didn't. I felt clear. Jessica's world hadn't collapsed because I was cruel. It collapsed because she built it on shallow foundations, held up by people she disrespected. I'd simply stepped aside and let gravity do the rest. As I poured myself a glass of wine that evening, I checked Instagram. Jessica had deleted every wedding post. Her profile photo was now blank. A text came through from Michelle. "You okay?" I typed back, "Never been better." And it was true. I'd finally stopped trying to be someone else's safety net. I'd finally chosen me. The fallout from the canceled wedding spread through our family like wildfire. By the end of the week, my phone was a war zone of messages, some angry, some passive-aggressive, a few even sympathetic. My mother vacillated between rage and guilt, leaving voicemails that veered from, "I can't believe you'd betray your own sister like this," to, "Maybe we pushed too much on you, sweetheart." My father didn't say much, as usual, but when I ran into him at the grocery store and offered a polite hello, he barely looked at me. My aunt from Oregon sent a Facebook message asking if I was okay and added that she always thought Jessica was a little too entitled. Small victories, I guess. But it was Jessica's silence that was the loudest. She didn't text, she didn't call, she didn't post anything on social media. Her wedding photos disappeared from Instagram, her bridal registry was taken down, and her account went dark. For 2 weeks, it was like she'd evaporated. Until, of course, she reemerged with an explosion. The post hit my feed on a Tuesday morning, a picture of her in full makeup and a white silk robe, holding a coffee cup with the caption, "New chapter, no time for toxic energy, grateful for the lessons." It had thousands of likes and dozens of comments, all from the same circle of enablers. "You're glowing, queen. Anyone who walks away from you loses everything. Your piece is too expensive for the wrong people." I rolled my eyes and kept scrolling. I knew what this was. Image control. Damage management. Jessica couldn't control what happened, so now she was rewriting the story. And based on the DMs I started getting from mutual acquaintances, she was doing it well. One message from a friend I hadn't spoken to since high school read, "Hey, I heard everything that happened. Jess says you canceled her wedding because she refused to co-sign a loan for you? That can't be right, right?" Another said, "So sorry about the money problems. Don't let jealousy ruin things." It was almost funny. She had actually convinced people that I had asked her for money, that I'd been the one begging for help, that her wedding had been sabotaged by a bitter older sister with financial issues and unresolved emotional baggage. I could have defended myself. I could have sent out screenshots, shared receipts, exposed the entire thing, but I didn't, not because I wanted to protect her, but because I didn't need to explain myself to people who never saw me in the first place. Let them believe whatever version of me she'd constructed. It didn't change the truth. Still, the lies were grating, so when I got an invitation to our cousin's baby shower the following month, an event I knew Jessica would attend, I didn't hesitate. I RSVP'd yes, not to start drama, but to be seen. To remind her and everyone else that I was still here, unbothered, unmoved, and fully in control of my life. The shower was held at our aunt's house, a cozy white brick home with a garden full of lavender and climbing roses. I arrived in a navy jumpsuit, heels, and a pair of gold earrings I'd bought after the wedding. I didn't wear them to show off, but to remind myself that I deserved beautiful things too. When I walked in, a few heads turned. Conversations paused. My mother gave me a stiff nod from across the room. My cousin waved enthusiastically. And then there was Jessica, seated at a table near the back, holding a mimosa and wearing a pastel pink wrap dress like nothing had ever happened. Our eyes met. She didn't smile, neither did I. I walked over to my cousin, hugged her, congratulated her, and made small talk with the guests. I was charming, calm, completely composed. I didn't mention the wedding. I didn't mention Dylan, who had reportedly moved back to his hometown in Colorado and deleted every trace of Jessica from his socials. I didn't even mention the money. I let her sit there and watched me exist without flinching, without groveling, without disappearing in shame like she clearly hoped I would. At one point, I caught her staring. I raised my glass slightly in her direction, a small, subtle toast, and then turned away. Later that afternoon, as I stood in the kitchen talking to our aunt, Jessica appeared beside me like a shadow. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. I nodded and followed her outside. We stood on the back patio, just far enough from the others not to be overheard. She looked thinner than I remembered. Tired, but the edge in her voice was still there. "I know you think you did the right thing," she began, arms folded, "but you didn't have to humiliate me." I took a breath. "I didn't humiliate you. You did that to yourself." She blinked. "You canceled my wedding, Casey." "I withdrew my contributions," I corrected, which, by the way, totaled over $30,000 once you include the extra services and fees I covered. And I did that after you and your friends mocked me behind my back and called me names, after you turned my generosity into a joke. She looked down at the ground, then back up. "It was just stupid venting. We were stressed. I didn't mean it." I shrugged. "Maybe you didn't, but you said it. And you never apologized, not really." "I said I was sorry," she muttered. "No," I said firmly. "You asked me to undo the damage not because you regretted what you said, but because you needed something. That's not an apology, Jessica. That's manipulation." She bit her lip, and for a moment I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd take accountability. But then she said, "You've always resented me. You just waited for the perfect moment to punish me." I laughed once, cold. "You think this was about punishment? You think I've been waiting my whole life to ruin your wedding? Jessica, I was the only one holding your wedding together. I bent over backwards for you, and you took it for granted, so I stopped. That's not revenge. That's boundaries." She didn't respond. just stood there, arms folded, eyes darting back toward the house. Eventually she said, "I hope you're happy." "I am," I replied, finally, and I meant it. I walked back inside, rejoined the party, and didn't look back. The next week, I closed on a small townhouse just outside the city. It wasn't the grand house I once imagined, but it was mine. Paid for in part by the money I had originally set aside for Jessica's wedding. I bought furniture I loved, I painted the walls warm tones, I adopted a senior dog named Peanut, I started a new chapter quietly, intentionally, and without apology. Jessica still posts online, pretending nothing ever happened. I'm sure she tells a version of the story that makes her look like the victim, but I don't care. I'm not responsible for her narrative. I'm responsible for my peace, and I have no intention of giving it up again. Not for her, not for anyone. I've learned the hard way that sometimes the only way to truly love yourself is to stop loving people who only see you as useful. And once you let go of that weight, you don't just move on, you rise. 2 months after the wedding that never was, life had finally begun to settle into something resembling peace. My townhouse was coming together, slowly, room by room. I had started sleeping better, eating better. I took long walks with Peanut, my newly adopted gray-muzzled mutt, and rediscovered the joy of quiet evenings filled with books and jazz records instead of frantic phone calls from people expecting me to solve their chaos. It was peaceful, but it wasn't forgetful. I didn't forget what had been said. I didn't forget the way my family looked at me afterward, like I was the villain in some elaborate soap opera. And most of all, I didn't forget that Jessica had yet to take any real responsibility. She hadn't reached out again after the baby shower. No apology, no attempt at reconciliation, just more curated posts and vague captions about healing and growth. But I didn't care. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. It was late October when my mother called out of the blue. She rarely called anymore, not since the wedding debacle made me, in her eyes, untrustworthy with family matters. But this time, her voice was softer, careful, like she was walking on eggshells. "Sweetheart," she began, "I was hoping you could come to your father's birthday dinner next week. Just something small, close family, nothing fancy." I paused, suspicious. "Is Jessica going to be there?" "Yes, but..." "Then no." My answer was immediate. I wasn't interested in pretending anymore. I wasn't going to sit across the table from a sister who'd publicly humiliated me and now refused to even acknowledge it. My mother sighed. "Don't you think it's time to move on? It's been months. People are tired of the tension. Your father misses you, and I miss peace," I replied. "I'm not ready to play happy family for people who never protected me when it mattered." A few days later, I received a text from my cousin Olivia, who I was still close with. "I know you skipped the birthday dinner, but just so you know," Jessica made a toast. Said something about turning pain into power and rising above betrayal. I stared at the screen. Betrayal. That was the word she used? After everything? After I'd gifted her $25,000, 0 cents, coordinated half her wedding, and absorbed her insults in silence? I wasn't just the villain. I was now her origin story. Her drama-fueled rebirth into some empowered influencer persona. I felt the fury creep up the back of my neck. Not loud, not explosive, but steady. A cold, focused sort of anger. And this time, I didn't want revenge through silence. I wanted to reclaim the narrative. The opportunity presented itself a week later when I got a call from a woman named Tanya. She was a freelance writer and editor for a popular online lifestyle blog. She had found me through a mutual acquaintance, someone who knew a little about what had happened and apparently found my version of events compelling. Tanya was working on a piece about wedding burnout, toxic expectations, and family finances. "I was wondering if you'd be open to sharing your story anonymously," she said. "I think it would resonate with a lot of readers. There are so many women who are expected to give endlessly to family and then shamed when they set boundaries." I hesitated, not because I didn't want to share, but because part of me worried I'd be doing exactly what Jessica accused me of. Seeking attention, airing dirty laundry. But Tanya wasn't asking for names. No photos, no real identifiers, just truth. So I said yes. I told her everything. I told her about the gift, the screenshot, the cancellations. I explained how my sister had twisted the story, how I became the villain to save my own dignity, and how no one stood up for me. Tanya was a careful listener, thoughtful. She didn't interrupt. She just let me speak. 2 weeks later, the article went live. It was titled, "When Saying No Becomes a Family Scandal, The Cost of Giving Too Much." I read it 3 times. She had done justice to every nuance. The piece went semi-viral, shared thousands of times across social media platforms. It was picked up by other blogs. I received dozens of messages from strangers thanking me for putting words to something they had lived, but never articulated. Some of them had been the Casey in their own families, others had been the Jessica, and finally saw their actions in a different light. What I didn't expect was the fallout, because even though I hadn't named names, those who knew us knew the story. And Jessica, she knew exactly what I'd done. She texted me at 2:14 IAM 3 days after the article went live. "You think you're clever? You're a narcissist in victim clothing. Hope the attention was worth it." I didn't reply. She followed up with, "If you think this ends here, it doesn't. People are watching. You look petty." I read it once and deleted it. There was nothing left to say. The next day I received a message from Dylan's sister. We'd only spoken once, briefly, at a wedding planning meeting, but her message was long and heartfelt. "I just want to say thank you." We didn't know what was happening behind the scenes. Dylan blamed himself for walking away, but after reading that article, he finally feels some peace. What you did took strength. Most people don't have it. That message meant more than she probably realized, not because I needed validation from strangers, but because I had finally stopped being silent in the name of someone else's comfort. I had spoken up, and the world hadn't ended. Instead, it expanded. In the weeks that followed, Jessica's online presence shifted. She stopped posting the glossy, overly filtered affirmations. Her engagement dipped. The comments were less sycophantic, more questioning. She didn't go private or delete her account. But her tone changed, and slowly the narrative began to correct itself, not because I attacked her directly, but because I told the truth and let it do the work. I had always believed that revenge was about dramatic gestures and burning bridges, but now I understood the power of quiet reclamation. I didn't need to scream or expose her. I just needed to stop protecting her version of me. I had been loyal, generous, patient, and when pushed too far, I had chosen myself. Not with malice, but with clarity. That was the difference. That was the win. I didn't destroy her life. I simply stepped out of the role she cast me in and let the story rewrite itself. Not for applause, not for revenge, but for peace. And that, finally, was something she couldn't take away. By the time December rolled around, most of the noise had faded. The article's ripple effects slowed, the texts from mutual acquaintances stopped coming, and Jessica's vague subtweets about being stabbed in the back became less frequent. The silence wasn't exactly peaceful. There was still tension, still glares at family gatherings and passive-aggressive messages relayed through our mother, but it was quieter. And honestly, quiet was enough. I had stopped hoping for an apology. That version of me, the one who craved recognition, who wanted my sister to understand the damage she'd done, had died the day she called me cheap trash in a chat filled with people who had eaten my catered cupcakes and posed in front of decorations I'd paid for. Closure, I'd learned, didn't come in the form of other people's remorse. It came when you stopped letting their absence define your worth. Work was going well. I had landed a new promotion and my team was expanding. I finally had the financial breathing room to finish furnishing my home, and I even booked a trip to Seattle for a long weekend getaway by myself. It was something I'd always wanted to do. Just me, a new city, and no itinerary. I spent the days walking through art museums and local shops, sipping overpriced lattes in tucked-away cafes, and reading novels by the fireplace in my Airbnb. No one asked me for favors. No one expected me to fix anything. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel like I owed anyone anything. I returned home to a snow-covered neighborhood and a blinking red light on my answering machine. Yes, I still had one, mostly out of habit. I hit play while unzipping my suitcase. It was my mother. "Casey, I know things haven't been easy, but we're doing a family dinner for Christmas this year, and it would mean a lot if you came. Your father's been asking about you, and your cousin Olivia will be there. Just think about it, okay?" I deleted the message. It wasn't personal. It just wasn't something I needed anymore. I had spent so many years being dragged into rooms with people who weaponized guilt as affection, who believed that showing up was enough, even if they never did the work of showing care. I wasn't angry. I was just done. A few days later, I ran into my aunt at a local bookstore. She hugged me like nothing had happened and asked if I'd talked to Jessie lately. I said no. She tilted her head sympathetically and said, well, she's been through a lot, poor thing. First the wedding disaster, then the article, and now I hear she had to move out of that luxury condo. Apparently the lease wasn't renewed. She's back with your parents. I didn't say anything. I just nodded and let her keep talking. She went on about how Jessica had grown up so much in the past year and how maybe this all happened for a reason. I wanted to laugh. If Jessica had grown, it wasn't because she had changed. It was because the scaffolding of enablers and blind support had finally started to collapse around her. That night, I got a DM from someone I hadn't spoken to in over a decade, an old friend from high school. She wrote, "Hey, this is random, but I think I just interviewed your sister for a job at our office. Small world. She mentioned your name." I stared at the message. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I didn't know what Jessica said about me in that interview or why she would have brought me up at all. Maybe to paint herself as a victim again, maybe to leverage the proximity, or maybe, just maybe, to explain why she had a gap in her story that she couldn't quite account for. Either way, it didn't matter. Her path was hers. Mine was mine. Still, the irony wasn't lost on me. After years of being the one she used for social climbing, validation, and financial rescue, she was now in a position where my name was still opening doors, but not in the way she intended. Actions have echoes, words have shadows, and sometimes your past walks into rooms long before you do. I didn't need revenge. I didn't even need vindication, just distance. And I had that now. On Christmas Eve, I poured myself a glass of wine, lit a candle, and curled up on my couch under a thick wool blanket. Peanut snored softly at my feet. I had no dinner to host, no emotional labor to perform, no performative laughter to fake around a table where people pretended the year hadn't happened. I sent a few texts to friends, exchanged some cheerful memes, and then turned off my phone. That night, as the snow fell silently outside and the world grew still, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: solitude without loneliness. Not the aching absence of being left out, but the grounded calm of choosing yourself. In January, I received an unexpected email. It was from the wedding photographer Jessica had originally booked and that I had canceled when everything fell apart. He wrote, "Hi Casey, I was going through my files and found some behind-the-scenes shots from the rehearsal dinner cancellation day. Some of your relatives were in them. I know things got messy back then, but I figured you might want them. There's one photo of you walking out of the venue that I actually found quite striking. Let me know if you'd like it." And I replied politely and asked to see it. A few days later, it arrived in the mail. A black and white shot of me standing in front of the venue, coat in hand, the streetlights glowing behind me. My face was calm, unreadable, but my posture was steady, shoulders back, gaze direct. I stared at it for a long time. That was the moment I'd walked away, not just from the rehearsal dinner, but from years of erasure, guilt, and self-silencing. I had the photo framed and hung it near my front door, a reminder that walking away isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the strongest thing you can do. Jessica may never apologize, my parents may never see it clearly, and the people who took her side may still believe whatever version of the story made them feel righteous. But I knew what happened. I knew what I endured, what I rebuilt, and who I became in the aftermath. I became someone who no longer accepted love laced with obligation. Someone who no longer mistook manipulation for care. Someone who finally understood that peace wasn't found in being chosen by others. It was found in choosing yourself, again and again, even when no one clapped for you. Let them believe what they want, let them talk in rooms I no longer enter. I'm not part of that show anymore. The curtain fell, the stage is empty, and I've rewritten the script. This time, I'm not the side character in someone else's performance. I'm the author. I'm the audience. I'm the main act. It was late February when I received Jessica's letter. Not an email, not a text, but a handwritten letter folded neatly inside a pale pink envelope with my name written in her unmistakable loopy handwriting. It had been nearly 6 months since the wedding fell apart, since the article, since we'd spoken in any direct way. I held it for a long time before opening it, unsure if I even wanted to read it. Part of me worried it would be yet another performance. Another backhanded attempt at reclaiming control or deflecting blame. Another version of, "I'm sorry you felt hurt," rather than, "I'm sorry for what I did." But curiosity got the better of me, and I unfolded the paper slowly, preparing myself for whatever revisionist narrative she'd decided to spin this time. It wasn't long, barely a page. In it, she acknowledged that she had said things she shouldn't have, that she'd let her ego get in the way of our relationship, and that she understood if I didn't want anything to do with her anymore. She said she wasn't looking for a reset, just closure. She ended with, "I hope you're okay, I mean that." I read it twice, trying to gauge the sincerity, and maybe it was real, or maybe it was just another way for her to soothe her own conscience. But honestly, it didn't matter anymore. I didn't feel the old ache, the desperate need to fix things or to believe she'd finally changed. I didn't feel resentment either, just a strange neutrality, like watching the final credits of a movie you once thought would be your favorite, only to realize halfway through it was never really meant for you. I placed the letter in a drawer, not because I wanted to keep it, but because I didn't feel like throwing it away. It was a timestamp, a quiet marker of a chapter closed, not with fire or fury, but with stillness. And that in itself felt like growth. In March, I bought myself a small ring, nothing fancy, just a simple band with a tiny diamond chip. It wasn't symbolic in the dramatic sense, no vows to myself or declarations of independence, but it was a reminder that I could give to myself, that I didn't need someone else's validation to justify my value, that what I gave, money, time, love, was never small or forgettable, even if others failed to appreciate it. I wore it on my right hand, where no one else could claim its meaning but me. Spring came quietly, the snow melted, the days stretched longer, and my townhouse bloomed with small signs of life. New herbs in the kitchen windowsill, tulips pushing up from the garden bed I'd planted late in the fall. I hosted a small dinner with a few friends one evening, and as we sat around the table, laughing, passing plates, and trading stories, I realized how light the air felt. There was no pretense, no underlying expectation that I was there to fix anyone's problems. I wasn't the emotional caretaker. I was just Casey, showing up, being seen, and finally feeling free. Sometimes I still think about how things might have been different if Jessica had apologized sooner, if our parents had been willing to look past their own comfort and see the truth, if I had spoken up earlier instead of shrinking myself for the sake of keeping peace that was never mine to begin with. But those thoughts don't carry weight anymore. They pass through, quiet and unremarkable, like distant weather on a horizon I'm no longer chasing. I'm not bitter, I'm just not waiting. I haven't spoken to Jessica since that letter, and I don't plan to reach out, not because I hate her. I don't. I genuinely hope she finds what she's looking for, that she grows into someone who can give as much as she takes, that one day she truly understands the damage she caused, not just to me, but to herself. But her growth is no longer my responsibility. My healing isn't contingent on her remorse. I've taken back the narrative. I've taken back the power. I've stopped trying to prove that I was enough, because I always was. I was more than enough when I gave her that money. I was more than enough when I stayed silent while they laughed behind my back. I was more than enough when I walked away with my dignity intact. That's the thing about being called cheap trash. It sticks with you for a moment, makes you question your worth, your choices, your role in other people's lives. But then, if you're lucky, or stubborn, you realize that the label only has power if you wear it. And I never wore it. I returned it, unopened, to the sender. These days, I wear a different name, not a title, not a role, not a label handed to me by someone else. Just mine, just Casey. Whole, calm, no longer performing. And in that stillness, I found something better than closure. I found myself.